Adele Harty, cow-calf field specialist for SDSU Extension, and I am here with Hector Menendez, who is our state livestock grazing specialist for SDSU Extension. And yesterday you had a presentation about managing cows during a drought and with feed shortages and really looking at that systems approach. And I know systems isn't something that's easy for a lot of people to understand, but I think it's really important to understand how one decision can affect another. And so can you kind of walk us through that a little bit of how that systems approach works?
Sure, so definitely, yeah, it's a complex method for complexity, right? So systems is needed to really account for how the variables interact with each other, how everything influences each other. And so Dr. Rhodes and I really tried to outline the unintended consequences of different decisions that producers are specifically in here and now during drought and what they might be able to do about it. And so hopefully this analysis or presentation helped them just to get a different lens. And what that lens does is it helps us to identify, so feed shortage, for example. We know there's a gap between how much feed we want on our range and how much grass is present, and whether we're purchasing hay or feed or corn or DDGs, and those are hard decisions. And so we outlined 3 different loops that would be activated. And would you like me to go ahead and describe those different?
Yes, that would be great.
So to close the gap between our feed shortage, there was one that's pressure to sell cows, and that's a real thing. And unfortunately, that pressure to sell cows aligns with low cattle prices. But if we sell cattle, we can decrease the amount of feed we need for our animals. And then likewise, we outline one that's purchasing feed. And so those 2 alternatives are what we call a quick fix. And in the systems world, there are unintended consequences with quick fixes, or we call that fixes that fail. So that's an archetype. And what that really does is it's a solution to our problems, just like a squeaky wheel or our car that needs maintenance, but often these quick fixes fail and they lead to worse consequences. And so we outline 2 consequences from those solutions, which are that if we sell cows at depressed prices, we're basically increasing our costs. And so we're not able to cost effectively maintain our cow herd. Likewise, if we're purchasing a lot of hay that's really expensive and probably low quality, unfortunately, we're also eroding our ability and our capital to cost effectively maintain our cow herd. And so what that does is that prevents the producer over time from implementing long-term and systemic solutions that will enable their business to be profitable. So one other reinforcing loop, and this perpetuates the problem at hand, is overgrazing. And so unfortunately we can tend to overgraze with biological processes that happen on our rangeland that prevents us from capturing snowpack and water infiltration and regrowth for the next. So really by overgrazing, setting ourselves up for difficulties the next year. And so by choosing which of these 2 options are able to not put us in a financial difficulty, we're actually preventing overgrazing. And so that led to the 3 interventions that were identified in the presentation.
So what were those 3 interventions that you talked about?
Yeah, so we really wanted to drill down, and it's different for every ranch operation. So they were meant to more create a general thought, or taking the time to think through these interventions. So one was analyze our destocking strategy. The second was, can we come up with more cost-effective feeding solutions, and then managing the cow herd differently. And so with the first one, it's just doing the simple profit and loss or P&L statement for year 1 and year 2. And so there was a lot of interesting feedback during the sessions, but really just taking the time to say, well, if I destock, our example was 100 cows, what will my profit and losses be for this year? And Ryan really wanted to emphasize the fixed costs versus variable costs, and making sure that if destocking was the option, we accounted for those differences in being able to maintain profitability with our fixed costs that don't really change no matter if we destock or not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things with the destocking system that's important is we're going to destock those cows at the decreased price level like you were talking about, but most of the time when we're in a situation where we can restock, those prices have increased, and so that can also continue to challenge that system.
Absolutely, and just taking the time, even like Ryan was saying, doing some cowboy math on the hood of your truck, it's totally worth it. But unfortunately, a lot of people make gut decisions and don't take the time to just pencil it out. And I think that's where meeting with extension specialists that can quickly help producers do that math.
Yes.
And the time it takes for that 30-minute to an hour phone call is totally worth it compared to the potential losses a producer could get into.
Totally agree.
Yep.
So you also talked about supplementation and being a little more strategic about that. What does that entail?
Sure. So with the strategic supplementation, we broke it down on a pound of crude protein basis, or price per pound of crude protein. And so we suggested a couple strategies if forage was deficient in crude protein, which is, you can put out a 20% crude protein supplement on your fields that you might have to apply 2 to 3 times per week versus a 30% that you could get away with for once a week. And so we did a quick assessment of the labor costs. And so the main point was consider all of your costs, labor and the cost of that supplement. That way you can really see the true cost of, are you paying less for a crude protein supplement but having to go feed it more?
Right.
And is that driving up your labor costs and time you could spend doing other things?
Well, and that one really hit home for me as a nutritionist, because I think there's a lot of value in being able to help producers make some of those management decisions, but you have to look at all the costs involved. And yeah, the cost per unit of nutrient is something that I work on a lot, and so I appreciate that you guys kind of reemphasize that in your talk there.
Absolutely, and I think Ryan would want me to point out that paying for a tub, for example, is just paying for convenience,
Yep.
but there's a lot of disadvantages. Not saying it may be right for some producers, but they should definitely pencil it out instead of just saying, well, this is the most convenient option, because there may be, again, some unintended consequences in terms of those hidden costs.
Right, right. So there was one other strategy?
Manage the cow herd differently. And so this is assuming that, destocking may or may not, destocking may or may not have been an option. And then also we've considered our feed prices or our buying, but if those high or expensive feeds aren't an option, then we can analyze, well, do we need to use some type of residue in terms of corn used for feeding, and it might be a little lower, but that would include a sacrifice pasture.
Yep.
And then importing those crop residues or doing livestock integration as a way to not have to sell animals, but then also maintain that cow herd. And there might be a little bit of loss in body condition score, but again, balancing out a little bit of loss in condition versus losing or decreasing our cattle herd population, our mature cow herd population.
Right, and then that decreases your profit potential as well. So, no, I think that provided a lot of great information and ideas for producers to think about as they're looking at their individual situations and trying to figure out what option might work best for them. So.
Sure, and I think the point that we want to drive home is it's definitely worth the time to just consider the intended and unintended consequences of these decisions and to just pencil it out, because again, in the long run, doing that quick math is going to save time and money, hopefully, and help the producer to be more sustainable in the long run.
Yes.
Yep.
So, well, I appreciate your time, Hector. This has been great, and I look forward to working with you more on systems in the future.
Thank you so much, Adele.